Hello everyone, welcome back again. In today's class, we will start off with introduction to CSS. So let's get started. Okay, so CSS it is a cascading style sheet. So the full form of CSS is cascading style sheets. These CSS they are fondly referred to as cascading style sheets. They are referred to as CSS. This CSS it is a simple design language which are intended to simplify the process of making a website web pages more presentable. So this CSS handles the look and feel part of a web page. So using CSS, you can control the color of the text, the style of the fonts, the spacing between paragraphs, or how different columns are sized and laid out, what background images or colors are used, as well as a variety of other effects. Basically, these CSS they are used for designing purposes. Like in our previous classes, we have learned HTML. So this HTML they are basically used to design the structure of a website, and then the JavaScript they are used to make our website dynamic. Similar to that, these CSS cascading style sheets they are used for designing purposes. So in HTML we have applied some designing like alignments or changing the font colors or changing the font styles. Those styles they are limited to HTML. So with the help of CSS, we can design the look and feel of websites more properly. So these the style definitions are normally saved in .css files. So basically we have a different type of CSS like internal CSS, inline CSS, and external CSS, which we will be learning in our next classes. So but if we are using an external CSS, that means if we are going to write a separate CSS file and then a separate HTML pages, while saving the CSS file we have to save it as a .css file. So that means CSS have a file extension of .css. And then with external, the advantage of using external style sheet is that you can change the look of an entire website by just adjusting one file. So for example, let's say you have a web page or a website. In that a particular website you may have multiple numbers of heading 1, let's say, and then if you want to change the font color and then the font style of that heading 1 by using this CSS file, you can just change that value and CSS file so that it will affect all of the heading 1 in your entire web page or a website. So all those things we will learn later on in our classes. Now let's see what are the advantages of CSS. So the first and foremost is CSS saves time. So you can write CSS once and then reuse the same sheet in multiple HTML pages. You can define a style for each HTML and apply it to as many web pages you want. So like in our previous classes in HTML, suppose like if you have a two different heading 1 elements, let's say text. So if you want to change the font color of all the heading 1s into red, we have to define the font color and put of that headings, put of that heading 1. But if we use CSS by creating our CSS file only in a single sheet, we can change both of that heading 1 font colors. So that's an example how CSS help us to save time. There are lots of ways how it saves times, but one of the basic example is that if suppose if you have two same elements, and then if you want to change the properties like the font color, font styles, or alignments or so on, you can change it only in a single CSS files. After that, the second is pages load faster. So if you are using a CSS and you do not need to write the HTML text attributes every time. You just write one CSS role of the tag and apply it to all the occurrence of that tag. So less code means faster download times. So like I've said in the first advantage that suppose if you have 10 different heading one elements, and then if you want to change that heading ones, you just have to define that uh, define that in only one single files, and then all of that those different then HTML each one will get affected. That means suppose if you have 10 different heading one decks, and then if you want to change the properties of, or if you want to design the font color and then font size of the 10 different heading ones, you do not have to write 10 times to change that font color. You just need to write only once. So that helps in uh, loading our web pages faster. After that, the third one is we are easy maintenance. So to make a global change, simply change the style and all the elements, and the web page will be automatically updated. That means like if you want to change anything inside your web pages, like for example a paragraph, like in headings or in images, you just have to write only once. You just have to declare only once in the CSS, and then all of different HTML tags which you define, it will be get affected. For example, like in our first and second examples, suppose like if you have five different images in five different HTML pages, and then if you want to resize that image and five different HTML pages, you just have to declare once in a CSS file, so that all of that five different HTML pages with the five different images will be resized. So that is also one of the examples. Easy maintenance. After that, superior style to HTML. So CSS has a much wider area of attributes than HTML, so you can give a far better look to your HTML page and a comparison to HTML attributes. So when we learn HTML, we have applied some designing within our HTML text, like those changing of font colors, font style, font size, and then alignments. So all those attributes are limited, but with the help of CSS, we can do it much more than that. After that, the next one advantage is multiple device compatibility. So style sheets will allow contents to be optimized for more than one type of devices. By using the same HTML documents, different versions of our website can be presented for handheld devices such as videos and cell phones, or for printing. So with the help of a CSS, uh, web page can be rendered depending on different devices. Like suppose if you have a website and we are not sure what type of devices our user or our client will use, so depending on the different devices, with the help of CSS, it can be uh, customized. For example, a website may look something different, the layout will look different while viewing a website from a computer, whereas with the help of CSS, it can again be rendered so that it can be viewed without any problems in mobile phones, and so on. And then the last one is, again, we have global web standards. So now the HTML attributes are being depreciated, and it is being recommended to use CSS. So this is and those attributes, those values we have learned, those things are not much widely used, and then the use of CSS is recommended for to display your website properly in different devices, and to make it easier, and then to make your website more better, it is recommended to use CSS. Okay, so now, and that is the advantage of CSS. Now we shall see the CSS syntax. So while creating any CSS files. So when you want to design your HTML pages, it is very important to understand the syntax of a CSS. So before doing anything, you make sure that you learn and understand the syntax of CSS. So syntax means it is like a rules we have to follow while doing something. Like if you are going to write in AC, you have to follow the grammar. Like you have to need to have a heading, you need to have an introduction, you need to have a body conclusion, and or else, like if you are learning in English, you have to learn what are verbs, nouns, or you have to learn the English grammar, something like that. They are not exactly the same, but syntax means it is some kind of rules we have to follow. All right, so CSS role set consists of a selector and a declaration block. So out here, this is just an example. Okay, so in this example, this heading 1 is the selector. After that, whatever is presented inside these curly brackets, they are called as a declaration block. So this is the selector selection block. After that, this is the declaration block, which are enclosed inside curly brackets, open curly brackets, and then this is the closing curly brackets. So inside these we can have any number of properties and a value. Out here, the color and then the font size is the property. After that, this blue and then this 12 pixel is the value. So remember that under you can have a multiple number of selector, but in this example, let's say under heading 1 selector, we have inside this declaration block we have a color and then font size as the property. That means property means the property of an h1 which you want to change. Like inside this heading 1, the selector, it will have a color blue and then it will have the font size of 12 pixel. That means heading 1 will have a color blue and then it will have a font size 12. So inside this declaration block you can have multiple number of property and a value. Like in this example we have only two properties, but we can have more properties. Like inside this heading 1, it can have a color, font size, alignments, and so on, right? So we can have a multiple number of properties and a values. All right, so make sure to understand this CSS syntax before proceeding to learn more about CSS. So that means in a CSS syntax we have a selector and a declaration block. A declaration block is enclosed with a opening curly bracket and then closing curly bracket. Inside this declaration block we have a property and then a value. We can have any number of property and a value for any selector. All right, now right out here I have written this declaration block in one line. It is not mandatory that you have to write it in a single line. Okay, after that, make sure that two properties are separated by this semicolon. All right, after that you can write this font color and then next line also. All right, or else after writing heading 1 you can write this curly bracket and a new line. After that you can write your property name. After that you can give semicolon. You can continue from here, or else you can come to new line and then so you can go on. After that, make sure that when you are done with a particular block, make sure to close it. So you can write it in a single line or you can write it in a multiple line. All right, now we will try to learn the different blocks inside our that CSS syntax. All right, the first one what we have was we have a selector. So in this selector, it is the hook used to choose what parts of your HTML to apply the CSS to. Alright, so it indicates the element to which the row applies here. So this selector will choose what part of your HTML to apply the CSS. Out here in this example we have given h1, so instead of a heading 1 you can choose, like if you want to change the font color, font style of a paragraph, you can use P, or else if you want to change something like hyperlinks you can use A, like that. So what part of your web page you want to design, it can be like heading, if it is a heading 4 And then if you want to change the CSS of that heading 4, you can use selector as a heading 4. After that, you can give the declaration of for your properties and then the values. All right, after that we have a declaration block. So in this is the altogether this is the declaration block. All right, so declaration block, everything within the curly brackets opening and then closing is called the declaration block. So inside this declaration, we have inside the declaration block, you can have as many declaration as you want, and each declaration is combination of CSS property and value. All right, after that property, so this one, okay, color and then this font size, we have a lots and lots of properties in CSS. All right, so in this example we have given only color and then the font size properties. So property is one of the CSS properties used to tell what part of the selector will change. All right, that means you suppose like you have a select h4 as a property, I mean a selector. So to change that property, what type of property you want to change, like the font size, a font color, or alignment, all these things, it can be specified in this property, and then which is followed by a colon. After that the value, the last one. So this one, blue and then 12 pixel in our example, this value, these are the assigned value to the property. So what property you value you assign to your property, like the value means this blue 12, or else like alignment sender. So sender is the value, alignment is the property, and so on. All right, now this is a typical view of CSS. So whenever say like I have told you in our previous classes, we have a different ways we can write our CSS, like inline CSS, internal CSS, and external CSS. In this example, we are writing internal CSS, which we will be learning more in our next class. So every time you want to use an internal CSS, it should be declared after style. After that, when you are done designing, you have to close the style tag. All right, so out here HTML tag starts from here. Out here we have 2 paragraph, hello world, this is paragraph style using CSS, right? So while using CSS, suppose like if you want to change the font color or a font size alignment, inside this p, right, we are referring to this paragraph. P is the selector. After that, inside this curly bracket, in this declaration block, we have a color as a property and then text align as a property. So we are changing the property of this selector, this element p, right, for this paragraph. That is the all the paragraph inside our HTML, it can have a 20 paragraphs. All right, so this paragraph will have a color red and then it will be aligned center. So this is the output what we will be seeing inside our browser. All right, so if we save this one as .html and then save it, you can see this one. So remember, if you are using an internal CSS, you have to save your pages normal .html pages, but if you are writing your CSS separately, you have to save it as .css. All right, so I hope you are following me what I mean. So out here we have 2 paragraphs. If you want to change the property of these 2 paragraphs inside your CSS, you just have to declare this paragraph element as your selector. After that, you have to give the property and then the value. Out here, this we are declaring that this p will have a color red and then it will align center. So output, it will appear like this. All right, now we shall see the different selectors in CSS. So CSS selectors are used to find or select the elements you want to style. So within any HTML pages or within any website, there may be multiple numbers of different elements, like you can have a heading 1 2 3 4 5 6, you can have a paragraph, you can have a table, you can have an images, audio, video, and so on. So what part or what element you want to select it, with the help of a selector, you can choose that HTML elements. All right, so these CSS selectors can be divided into 5 different categories. So sample selectors, it will select element based on name, ID, classes. And then combinatory selectors select element based on a specific relationship between them. After that, pseudo class selectors, it will select elements based on a certain state. And then pseudo element selector select, it will select and style a part of an element. After that, last one is attribute selectors. So this attribute selector will select elements based on an attribute or attribute values. All right, so out here we have again the CSS element selector. So let's see an example. This element selector selects the element based on the element name. So depending if uh, this element selector, it will select the HTML elements based on elements. So let us look into an example. Out here, like in our previous classes, we have one paragraph, right? After that, followed by another paragraph, it have an ID. After that, it can one more paragraph. You suppose like you have 3 different paragraphs inside our HTML pages. This one is CSS. This part is your internal CSS. So out here again, like in our previous classes, we have selected P as our element. This is the selector. After that, this paragraph will have text align center and then the color red. So all of this paragraph will be aligned to center. It will have a font color red. If you want to change the font size, you can write after this one font size. After that, you can declare your font size. So that is a CSS element selector. After that, we have the CSS ID selector. So the CSS ID selector uses the ID attributes of an HTML to select a specific elements. So suppose like you have 2 different paragraphs like this, and then one have an ID, the other does not have. So with the help using this ID, we can style differently, which we will see now. So the ID selector use the ID attribute of an HTML elements to select a specific elements. All right. After that, the ID of an element is unique within a page. That means the ID for a particular element should be unique. So the ID selector is used to select one unique element. So to select an element with a specific ID, write a hash. All right, remember that whenever you select a particular element which have an ID, and then you want to design that one in CSS, whenever you use ID, make sure to write hash before the selector name. All right, after that, followed by the ID of the element. So let's look into an example how this CSS ID selector works. All right, so out here I have an HTML page. All right, this is in HTML. This is the output which we will be seeing inside our browser. All right, so we have a 2 paragraph out here. Put have a paragraph tag. One paragraph and have an ID as para1. You can give any ID name as you wish, but it cannot start with a number. All right, so the first paragraph and have an ID. So this ID are used to identify this paragraph. All right, so this ID have a name bara1, and then the second one is a sample paragraph. So this is a paragraph which is not affected by CSS. So while designing inside the designing your CSS, all right, we have I want to design only this one, hello world. All right, and then this hello world is inside this para one, right? So since we are using an ID, it should start within hash followed by your ID name. So any element that is inside this ID, it starts from here and then ends here. So any elements or any tag which have an ID, it will get affected by this center. It will be center aligned and then the color will be red. So this hello world is inside this para one. It will have a center align and then the color is red. After that, since we did not declare anything inside our CSS for this paragraph, it will display as it is. All right, so suppose like if you did not write this one, and then you just simply write this p, this part of the paragraph will have a center align, and then the color will be red. So out here we are using our CSS using this ID. That's why we have written hash first, after that para 1, that is the ID name, after that followed by the text. All right, so normally whenever you design your web page, you can do it in your own way. All right, you can use an ID, or if it is not necessary, you can avoid your ID and so on. But most probably, like in a single web page or a website, there may be lots and lots of paragraphs. So if you want to have all of those paragraphs to have a different font color, different font size, or different alignments, you can use either an ID or a paragraphs. All right, so that's the next one is CSS class selector. So the CSS class select elements which with a specific class attribute, and then to select elements with a specific class, write a period character followed by the class name. So these class selector and then ID selector, they are almost same. All right, the only difference is that you, whenever you use class, you have to start with an period. All right, so let's look into an example. Out here we have one heading one, and it have a class sender. Instead of class, if you want to use ID, you can use ID also, but if you use ID, you have to use hash instead of period or full stop, and then instead of ID, if you use class, it should start with full stop. That's it. All right, so out here we have one heading one, red and center line headings. We have written that one. After that we have another paragraph, and then it have a class sender. So both have the same class, like one is in heading, one is in paragraph, but we have a same class name, right? So whenever you design it, if you just give the class name, it will be aligned sender and then red. So both of these will have the same CSS properties because we are designing using the same class name. All right, like if you want to design it separately, you can give a different class name for this one. For example, if you give p, while designing you just have to write dot p, after that curly bracket, after whatever properties and then value you want to give it to this paragraph, you can give it, and then after close it, so that both the heading one and then paragraph will have a different CSS properties. So that's how we can use a CSS ID selector or a CSS class selector. All right, you can use a class or you can use an ID if you have a multiple numbers of heading ones or a multiple numbers of paragraphs to be designed using CSS. Okay, so apart from that, with the same example, you can also specify that only a specific element should be affected by a class. So out here in this is similar to our previous example. In this CSS class selector, we have one heading one, and then we have another paragraph. Both have a same class name, but however, if you want we have a different output like this, that means if you want to have both of these to have a different CSS properties, all right, we have to write p dot sender. That means the element name, after that the class name. So this p dot sender, this one will have a text align sender, and then it will be color red, and then we did not write anything. So same thing, if you want to design for heading one, you can write like dot h1 dot sender. After that you can write your CSS properties. All right, like in this example we have a class name as a sender, but apart from sender you can give any name as you wish. All right, but it cannot start with a number. So if you want to if you use a class and then multiple elements, HTML elements have the same class name, you can use like this: the element name, the tag name, after that the class name, after that you can give your properties. All right, after that next one is we have a CSS universal selector. So this universal selector Star is used, select all the elements on a page, and then this is also below will affect the HTML page on the same page. That means within a single page, if you use star, all the text will be aligned center, and then all the text will be font color and so on. Like if you want to align an image, or if you want to resize an image in a particular page, you can use star, and then you can align, you can give the size of an image, size is equal to like that, right? So star is used for as universal selector where all where the CSS rules will affect every HTML elements on that page. Okay, after that, here we have a CSS Grouping Selector. So this is also very important in CSS. The grouping selector selects all the elements within the same style definition. After that, to group selectors, separate each selector with a comma. So like suppose like if you have a heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and then if you have a paragraph also, after that if you have some different headings also, if you want to have the same CSS styles for all of your headings, all of your paragraphs, we can use CSS Grouping Selector. All right, so let's look into an example. In this example, we have heading 1, heading 2, and then we have a paragraph. And then suppose like we want all of these to have the same font color, same font size, or some same CSS properties. Inside this we can use different selectors separated by a comma. This is a grouping selector. All right, that means all of these heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 will have a text align center and then the color of red. So suppose like you have a different HTML text, and then you want all of this text to have the same CSS properties, you have to use, or you have to declare it this way. All right, so that's the end of an introduction to CSS. So make sure to learn the syntax of a CSS, and then different selector and CSS. All right, so that it will be easier for you to follow along with me in our next classes. So in our upcoming classes, I won't be typing when I explain it. I will add a screenshot what I did while making this presentation, and then after that I will show the output this way. All right, so to save time, we will proceed it that way. So I hope you are clear with why we use CSS, and how to use or how to create a CSS briefly. All right, so thank you so much, and then I see you in the next class. Next class. Next class. Next